The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon. We are so excited to be here with you guys today for our next Power Panels webinar. So hopefully you guys are all logging in right now. We're going to give people a little bit of time to join us. We have quite a few already on, but we are ramping up our attendees this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're at. So while people are joining, so this is a new little feature. We're going to try to see if this works this morning. But we're going to see where you guys are all from today. So we'd love to hear where you're joining us today. And so we have this new little program. And if you put your phone over that QR code, you can tell us what state you're joining us from today. So we'd love to know where you are. So let us know. Just hover over that. Oh, you know what? You probably can't see it. Oh, there you go. Can you see it? Okay, so if you can hover over that QR code and let us know what state you're joining us from today. We would love to see where everybody's at. Oh, there we go. All right, so we got some Indiana, got North Carolina. Welcome. Oh, we're getting people from all over. Very cool. So Minnesota. Oh, Indiana is represented today. Oh, so cool. So we've got some Missouri, we've got Oklahoma as well. They're putting it in the question box. Arizona, hello. We are so excited you guys are here. Oh, I love seeing it. Oop, there's Illinois popping up and Texas. And if you have just joined us, if you can just hover over the QR code on your screen, it will take you to a little thing where you can type in where you're joining us from today. We'd love to hear where you guys are all at. Everywhere today. We were just talking, our panelists, I'm so excited to introduce you to our panelists today, but they're from all over the place too, and all kinds of different property types and things like that. So we are excited to hear from everyone today. So we've got Florida, Texas, Minnesota, North Carolina. There we go. Got some coming in the questions box too. So and you can also go straight to slido.com, so SLIDO.com, and then you put in that little number that's on your screen. So if you don't have your phone handy, you can still do it that way too. All right, people are joining pretty quickly. Yay, hello. I love that. I'm in Illinois technically, but I'm also right across the border from Missouri, so I like to see represented. Oh, we even got a little emoji. Hey, Arizona. All right, well, welcome everyone. So good to see everyone coming from all over the country. So we're excited for you to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, but we're excited to have all kinds of representation. So if this is new for you, if this is your first Power Panels webinar, I am Melissa DeSico, and I am the Director of Client Performance for Satisfax and Apartment Ratings. And you guys, I'm so excited to talk about delinquency today. So overcoming those delinquency blues, it's the thing that, we just have to, it has to be around. And we know delinquency can have a really big impact on our bottom line. And not only that, but the relationships that we have with our residents and the relationship they have with our property teams and, in tune with that as well with our owners. So it makes a big impact, and it's not the easiest thing to do. It's not our favorite part. Like, we'd rather be having all the parties and doing all the fun things with our residents and celebrating. But unfortunately, delinquency is part of the job as well. So helping our residents through that in the best way that we can while still making sure that our owners are secure is kind of what we're going for today. So like I said, I can't wait to introduce you to our panel here shortly. But we're going to get to them and they're going to share all of their knowledge with you guys. But a little bit before that, I just wanted to let you know how today is going to go. So it should take about 60 minutes today. I will follow up with all of you with the recording and slides, so you will be able to get all this information, feel free to take notes so you don't have to go back and listen to the entire recording to remember something that was said. So if you want, you can take notes, but you will get a copy of, you'll be able to download the recording after the session today. This is interactive as well. So our panelists would love to have questions from all of you. So in the questions box in your GoToWebinar panel, feel free at any time during the webinar today to submit questions. I'll try to keep track of that throughout the webinar, but if I don't get to it, I'll grab it at the end when we do the question and answer. But please send those as soon as the question comes to mind, put those in that box. At the end today, you will get an exit survey, and Satisfax, we love feedback, so please tell us what you thought of the session today and give us any kind of comments. We do feature some comments on social media, so we'd love to hear from you and what you thought today. In the follow-up email, you'll also be able to sign up for next month. So we will be talking about renewals next month, so we'd love to have you join us again. And then if you stick around till the very end of our webinar today, you'll find out how you can win a $50 Starbucks gift card. So we'd love to make sure that you're entered to win that. So stick around till the very end and I will tell you how to do that. All right, so if you have missed any of our webinar recordings, we have them since January. They're all kinds of different topics out there, and you can find those at satisfax.com. So things about maintenance, unique events, celebrating your teams and leasing strategies, all different pieces of sort of the multifamily industry. You can find different webinars and panels of experts that help you walk through some really cool ideas. So feel free to get out there and download those at any time. And today we also have a wonderful sponsor. So we'll talk a little bit about them today, but Stake is our sponsor today. And we have a little video about Stake. So I am going to show you a little bit about them, and we're excited you can find them and more information on them at stake.rent. And here is the video. All right, so thank you to Stake. I'm gonna make sure you can still see my screen. Okay. So thank you to Stake. And like I said, one of our panelists will talk a little bit more about Stake today. But really, they are an app that allows your residents to, if they pay their rent on time, they get cash back, and it can be actually transferred to bank accounts and different things. So it's really just sort of incentivizing them for paying their rent on time. So kind of a cool and timely sponsor for our delinquency webinar. So as I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit more about them here in a moment. But let's jump into delinquency and why we're here today. So the current state of delinquency. So when you look back, more than half of US renters are spending more than half of their pre-tax income on housing. And we know that rent just keeps going up. So that's not changing. But even before the pandemic, which has kind of made delinquency a little bit more in the forefront recently, many people really struggle to afford rent. Collectively, they pay landlords billions in late fees each year. And on average, the number is astounding, but there are on average 3.6 million eviction cases filed each year. So, and they say about 1.5 million Americans end up being evicted. So obviously, that's the worst case scenario when we're talking about delinquency. So we really want to talk about how do we manage that? So how do we handle it when it happens? How do we try to get at it a little bit proactively and try to figure out how can we avoid some of those problems and leading to evictions? So when, in the data, the Urban Institute has said that, not only are people behind like 1 month, but the average rent delinquency for those that are delinquent is over $5,000. So it's not a small amount. Sometimes, some of our residents just have a small balance or things like that. But with the pandemic, it's kind of exasperated the problem. So people are more delinquent or have a higher bill that they're trying to pay down these days. And in addition to that, about 9.8% of renters have received some kind of permission from their landlord to delay or reduce their monthly payment in some way. And that's from the Mortgage Bankers Association. And, again, knowing the problem, this exists, our residents, we're there for them. We want to make sure they love living in our communities, and we want to make sure that they feel safe and that they feel that they can afford to live there, because we want them to be able to live there, right? So my panelists here have proven track records of really overcoming the tough obstacles of delinquency, and they are fantastic, and they have some of the most amazing properties and different backgrounds. So I'm super excited to introduce them to you. So first, Tiana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Tiana Christopher. I am a property manager for Brick Management. I manage a little bit over 400 units spread out through 9 properties. I started in this industry as a leasing agent and just really kind of fell in love with it and worked my way up from there.
Wonderful. And you're in Philly, correct?
Yes, I'm located in Philly. The majority of my properties are in either Center City or what we like to call University City, where University of Pennsylvania is. Very historic, very old, but that is mostly where my properties are.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Tiana. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's great.
Excellent. And Celeste, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Celeste, and I am a service coordinator in Indianapolis, Indiana. And essentially, a service coordinator is like an on-site social worker that helps residents maintain housing. I'm currently at an affordable property with approximately 380 units.
Wonderful. And you were saying you have seniors, you have disabled, and then you have Section 8 as well, correct?
Right. So we have a unit, some Section 8 units. We have some safe harbor units, and half of our property is divided into families, and then the other half is divided into senior and disabled.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, thank you. Excited for you to be here as well.
Thank you.
And Adam.
Yes, hey. So my name is Adam Hurlebus. I am with Fortis Property Management. I work at the Meadows in Bloomingdale. It's a little city outside of Savannah, Georgia. So I'm on the coast in Georgia. It's a conventional property. It's a Class A garden style property with 200 units, and we have 120 still under construction. So it'll be 320 within the next 6 months.
Oh, wow. Add on top of that a mini lease up, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, welcome. Like I said, such great panelists, and I cannot wait for them to share. So let's just dive in. I'd love to know, and we'll start with Tiana this morning. So we want to know just what are sort of your top strategies sort of for collecting rent and getting ahead of that delinquency?
So I approve all leases that come through. And because I've been at this for a little bit over, I would say like 10 years, 11 years now, I have found that keeping track of my tenant base is just really crucial and essential. So for me, what I tend to look at is not necessarily like the tenants who just made the credit requirements. I tend to look at the tenants who just made the income requirements and kind of make a mental note of, okay, well, they just made it, it just got in, and I just kind of keep them in my orbit just to make sure their ledgers don't start to fall behind. Because in the past, that is where I've known my rent collection issues have kind of derived from, where they just met the standard and they were overextending themselves maybe, and may have a little trouble with paying rent on time or paying what they can, but always being like $100 or $200 short. So I do that by really maintaining open communication with the tenants, making sure they know who I am. I have, like I said, I had 9 different buildings spread out. So I try to get FaceTime with people when I can. One is, a few of them, are mid-rise, one is high-rise, and the rest are brownstones. So like there's not really like a lobby area or like a leasing office for anyone to kind of come down to. We do have an office, but it's important that I'm like really on site. That way people just can kind of catch me in the hallway. We do a lot of email blasts. We work with the property management software Appfolio. So they allow the text to go through the tenants. And so we just kind of communicate with them that way. So while we're not physically in the building, they feel like they can easily talk to us. We also use Stake, which is a great company. So the wonderful part about Stake is that when you are renting with us, you know, a lot of the landlords want to do 1 month free. How Stake works it is that, well, instead of doing 1 month free, why don't you tell the tenants they'll get 3% cash back? And then you'll give them the 3%, which is 3% of the whatever that lease amount is, for instance, like, you know, $1,200. And that comes out, they'll get it every month. They'll get that 3% every time they pay rent on time. And you, as the landlord, didn't have to pay a full month's rent to incentivize that tenant to, you know, come stay at your community. And that tenant really feels like this is great, like this is a new cutting edge program. Stake really isn't as widely known yet. So, you know, we do have that edge of letting people know, like, this is something that we have that no one else does. And I will say the tenants that have moved in with the Stake program have been more vigilant in doing auto pay with their rents and making sure they're extremely timely and very communicative. If something bad happens, they're like, I have a late fee, I don't know, I paid on time. They're really way more invested and worried about it because they want that deposit to go into their account. So that is kind of, those are the things that we usually try to do to make sure that our tenants pay on time.
That's super interesting. So does Stake sort of, does it work with Appfolio, or is that a totally different app for your residents?
Oh, so I should have mentioned this. So it's actually really easy for on the property management side because we have nothing to do with the app. So Stake has an app in which they run the customer service for. They make sure that the tenants are signed up for. No one has called the office asking like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, because their customer service is really on point. So it has nothing to do with anything. We just send them a monthly report on who paid their rent on time. That's the only thing. And at this point, we kept a spreadsheet. I had my admin, she whisked that baby out on the 5th of every month. And it's really just no effort with maximum result and reward. I did forget one thing. So we, my buildings, some of them are like super renovated and some of them aren't. Another way that we do incentivize tenants is letting them know, especially the tenants that we have that are graduate students, which are a large amount. So I like to call baby lawyers and baby doctors who want to stay in the area. Like once they move out of the 3-bedroom with 4 or 5 people, we have beautiful mid-rise apartments that they can have first access to. And we let them know that. So if you pay rent on time and have a good rental history, you can easily move into one of our mid-rise units. It may be a more desirable area and everything will transfer. You don't have to worry about first license security, credit check. We're more flexible with move-in date with you. So it really incentivizes our graduate students in particular to really be on top of it because they know like once they're in, they're in. No one wants to get up the first license security and all the fees that are required to move anymore. And this is the way we incentivize people to make sure they minimize on that by saying, hey, we have this amazing product. And when you're done with this, you can move here to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I imagine sort of your line item for concessions has gone down a bit as well.
Oh yes, I'm a budget person. So our line item for concessions have decreased dramatically, which is absolutely great. We don't, necessarily need it all the time because I really try to make sure that our communication is there and they feel like they can talk to us. And I love that the Appfolio text, because a lot of the younger clientele between about 25 and 35 really prefer to text. They don't even prefer to email. And Appfolio allows them to communicate with us via text message, but not from our personal phone. Like I can log into the software and still be on my computer and at my desk and communicate with the tenants in real time and an efficient way.
Have you seen that from text messages that they are responsive when it's about delinquent rent?
Yeah, funny enough. They won't answer the call, but they'll answer the text.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all seen the memes like, is this textable? And because my clientele is younger professionals, everything apparently has to be textable. So we make sure that it is. And, we really are able to get a much faster response from the people that we need to get them from if we send it out via text message versus, snail mail or email.
Oh, perfect. Interesting. Well, thank you. So, Celeste, we'd love for you to chime in as well. So, what are you doing for your top strategies?
I think Tiana hit on a really good point when she talked about having a relationship with your residents. And so because I'm at Affordable Property, we see a lot of delinquencies, and we first start with having a positive relationship with our residents. Most of our residents are deciding between, are they paying their rent, their child care, or buying food for their families. And so by having a positive relationship, they're not paying a nameless, faceless company. They're paying Celeste, or they're paying someone that they know. And so it's a lot easier. And then because we have service coordinators on site, they don't have to make some of those hard decisions. We can help them with resources to get food or maybe get some child care assistance so they don't have to make that decision. And then also I would always suggest that even at the rental office that they have a list of resources that are proven and that have paid others rent so that a resident can come and just grab that to pursue that before they are delinquent.
That's wonderful. So how do you typically do you usually, is it knocking on doors? Do you, send emails? Like what is your main sort of method for at least successful calls or interactions regarding delinquent rent?
So all the above. Any way a person would. So if we need to call them, we do. If we need to knock on their door and meet with them in person, we do. If we need to meet them at their job as service coordinators, we do that for them, just so they can, because we know just so they can pay their rent, and we know how important it is to keep them from being evicted. We know how eviction affects families. And so we do all the above to make sure that they stay housed.
Wonderful. All right, Adam, what are you doing over there?
Yeah, so I'm coming from this at it from a perspective of a market rate unit, conventional units, all just an apartment complex where the standards are enforced at the corporate level from a screening perspective, from qualifications, and so sometimes you have a wide range of different people that live out here, different demographics. I'm sure a lot of us are in that same position. But like Celeste said, and even Tiana, I think a lot of collection, all aspects of leasing and tenant relations, it's going to start on day one. Your renewals, your referrals, and our ability to collect. So that communication and just understanding that we're dealing with people in their homes, it's huge. So I think number one for me was just to treat tenants with compassion and empathy, and in their options when they're behind on rent or struggling with payment. Just some people are so embarrassed and ashamed that they just don't want to communicate with you, and it's a natural response. But if we build that trust and respect from the beginning, it's easier to have the harder conversations. So in some cases, you'll have conversations before they're even late, and you can offer options if you know what's going on. But if that's not the case, and after you send out your late notice and all that the laws require, that consistent communication and follow-up, just being mindful of the situation that they are in is always helpful. But I think importantly with that too is you need to set deadlines for the tenants and just make sure they know their options. So to tag along with that, I think the second point for me was consistency in timing and in communication. So I think there's nuance to that because it goes both ways. On one side, for us as the team and the people on site, we need to have accountability and consistency, and a schedule is super helpful because it's so easy to get lost in everyday distractions, and just you forget to try and collect because you're dealing with this tenant problem. And then so time goes on and each day is just more lost rent. So if you have a schedule and you're consistent with it, it's helpful for the team, but it also lets the residents know what to expect if you're consistent with them. I mean, that's just been a huge part of the consistency, as well as just, the tenants know, if you've had those conversations before, if it's unfortunately a habitual late payer, they know the routine and they know kind of your limits. So this sounds kind of counterintuitive because I said the first thing, to treat people with compassion and empathy, but we still have our jobs to do. So the third thing for me is, unfortunately, to just file evictions and dispossession proceedings as soon as you're able to. As long as you're following your guidelines, that's just the most efficient way, because not everyone is going to be able to. They may not care. You have people that just pay rent late and they'll bounce from eviction to eviction if residents, like if you don't do the screening right, or if they slip through the cracks or they lie on their application. You get people there that are just going to abuse the situation. In Georgia, for example, it's a little bit easier. I know some of your states that people are in, it can take 3 months plus just for an eviction to go through. Even in the pandemic, it's still been a little bit quicker in Georgia. And I've seen our delinquency build up when we had a tenant like that. So I can imagine what it's like for other people. So just every day that you wait is just another time, more time for the tenant to drag it out and for your financials just to take that hit. So yeah, for me, just, unfortunately being able to evict as soon as you're able is a huge step in managing rent collection.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people had some sort of backup in that area too, with some of the things, with the pandemic and all of that. Have you been able to catch up and sort of get the evictions back on track in terms of those that it's still necessary for?
Yeah, we have. And Georgia, like I said, has been a lot more landlord friendly than some of the other states. We're a protected property under the CARES Act, so we're still required to give a 30-day notice. But like the state of Georgia, we could file evictions on tenants pre-COVID to, within like the 10th or the 12th of every month, we could start the eviction process. And in some cases, they could be out within the month that they're delinquent. The court could move that quick. So it's been a little bit slower, but yeah, we've been able to.
Interesting. So when we think through, obviously, managing that process, so obviously we're communicating with residents, we're sending texts, emails, calls, flyering their doors, all of those things. We're being consistent and filing when we need to. But when we think about delinquency, something that you want to consider too, and I think this is helpful, to tackle delinquency from a proactive stance. So not thinking about what's going to happen when they're delinquent, but how can we as team members helping our residents through these things, how can we help them to get on track prior to it becoming a problem? So, just coming up with how are we handling this in a proactive manner and what things can we do? So if we can start with Celeste, if you can talk a little bit about how you're handling this before it even happens.
Exactly. So we put a lot of thought in how do we keep our residents from becoming delinquent, because we know once they become delinquent, there are a lot of fees, such as late fees and things of that nature, that can keep them from paying their rent. So the first thing that we try to do, or we do, is that we have an option for residents to pay their rent outside of the rental office. So in an affordable property, that's really important. A lot of our families are working and they can't get to our offices during that 9 to 5 timeline. So we have a way for them to pay online. We also offer resources. They're available when the service coordinators are available. They're also available when they're not. So we have a little resource book that they can easily grab. So if they're behind or they think they're going to be behind, they can start that process before the first of the month. And if we're at that very first part of the month where they are delinquent, but they're not ready to be filed on quite yet, we do offer, or we can offer, flexible payment options, not necessarily on their rent, but for example, if a resident pays their rent but is having issues paying their late fees, we have worked with property management before to offer a payment arrangement on those late fees so that they can pay those over time so that they don't have to be delinquent and possibly get filed on.
Right, and that's one of the biggest problems, I think, when you start thinking about delinquency. Those late fees, unfortunately, people already can't pay, and then, you know, the late fees start piling on, and I feel like they feel like they're drowning and they can't sort of get back out of it. So I love that you sort of do something to help them manage that piece so that they feel a little bit of ease in terms of, I can get out of this, right?
Exactly.
And I love the idea of a resource book. So is that just, you created that just for sort of your state, and that you guys use that and allow people to sort of take it, make sure they understand what their options are? I love that idea.
Yeah, we don't recreate the wheel here. There are plenty of resource books in every area that you can post in the lobbies of your buildings, in the community rooms if you have them, in your leasing office, so that they can discreetly go and pick one up. If you know of agencies in your area that you've seen pay other residents rent, that's always a great thing to do, to just kind of type that out and put that somewhere really accessible so that anyone can grab or jot down a number and start that process for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know why I just thought of this, but I think it would be really cool too if, you know, site teams maybe once a month just had some kind of class about, here are your options. You know, if you're trying to get money through the CARES Act, here's what you need. You know, we're here to help. So if you want to bring your stuff with you, we can help you through that. Because I know a lot of properties and teams are really starting to have to help people with the paperwork, because it's not easy, right? It's not like something you can just fill out an online document or something. So maybe offering sort of that hands-on resource to supplement that book, you know, I think that would be kind of a cool option, you know, to make people feel good about understanding what's in that book.
Yes, we do at our property offer classes for different things. And they know they can come to us, and the property management, if they're there and struggling, will refer them to us to do that. But for organizations or for properties who don't have service coordinators, that's a great idea. You can always call a local agency that you know is paying people's rent, and they'll be more than happy to assist and do that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, Adam, so what are you doing proactively over there?
Yeah, so some similarities to Celeste, and Tiana will probably have some stuff similar even to ours. But so like the first thing for me is encouraging different payment options. So we have, you know, WIPS, it's a money order alternative. They can pay on the website, they can pay in the office. But I know Stake is a great product to incentivize the, you know, the cash back. That's a neat feature. But we use a service at our company. It's called Till. It is a rent payment service that allows for people to pay, like Till pays us at the beginning of the month when rent is due, but it allows the tenants to break their rent payment up into manageable payments throughout the month based on their pay schedule. So for those people that are habitually late or poor money managers, it's a nice way for them to not get behind. It further incentivizes them by on-time payments. They're reported to the credit bureaus as a positive payment history. So, you know, along with Stake, Till is a neat option that we use. So to piggyback on that late fee option that Celeste was mentioning, a creative solution that we don't actually implement personally, but I was just thinking through the questions, like what's something we could do. So I know some companies do allow for some type of late fee forgiveness program. I think it's complicated and it's nuanced in how you'd set it up to be mindful of fair housing compliance and everything, but it's a great way for like people that are consistent and on time who make a mistake or maybe hit a bump in life, that you could implement some sort of reward system for tenants to where, you know, maybe they on a 12-month lease, if they're, consistent for the first half of the lease or for the first 2 months even, however you build it up, they could get like points or rewards to redeem towards maybe a late fee if they're late, or those that don't need it, maybe they could use it some sort of upgrade or renewal incentive, just something creative to encourage those, those on-time payments and then, work with people that may be late. So once they're late too, and even before, I guess, the rental assistance agencies that Celeste was mentioning, we have a list like that as well, local resources that we can offer to tenants, specifically those that come to us ahead of time that say, we're going to be late. This is, something we can offer ahead of time for them to get the ball rolling. That information is also on our late letter. I found that to be helpful too. And so the fourth thing for me was just utilizing our leasing software's feature to create late letters. Going ledger by ledger and typing something in a Word document or handwriting, it can be really tedious. If you've got some good leasing software that you can implement, just kind of a, click and print bulk late letters after you've posted the fees and everything, that's really helpful because it goes back to my consistency and timing and communication, everything. It makes it easier. But we have that list of rental agencies on our late letter to just kind of help with the process.
That's a really good idea. And I think a lot of us sort of just use the late letter we've always been using. So now might be a good time to sort of update that with some current information that's helpful. And then that way they're not embarrassed to reach out to you for help or, understanding what to do. You're kind of offering them those tools, again, proactively.
Yeah, sure. That was a new feature that we rolled out with COVID, once because we want to be sympathetic to the situations. And so when doing that, the late letter is still pretty harsh. It can be depending on how people receive it. So this kind of softened it a little bit just by offering that, the resources.
Absolutely. And I love Till. So there in this industry, I just find it so unusual that I don't think there's much variation in terms of when rent is due, across the country. It's like the first of the month. No, but when you have a car payment or, any other kind of loan, you get to pick your day or you have a range of days. But I think, our industry is a little bit different. And I've always hated that it's, for people that have income that comes in, more throughout the month and not always, every twice a week or whatever it is, or twice a month rather. I think that offering them that flexibility while allowing owners to still pay the mortgage on time, right? Because that's probably why it's due on the first. but then that gives your residents some flexibility. And I think that, and especially now, offering them options to pay a little bit more often, but a little less at a time. I think that just offers shows we're flexible and we're trying to help, right? Mm-hmm. Have your residents responded positively to that sort of flexible payment option?
Yeah, the rollout for Till was pretty easy. The emails went out. We've had some people sign up for it. Some people were. We actually presented it as an option for somebody that knew they were going to be late ahead of time, because they can get it set up early in the month and have their rent covered for the month, and then they're able to pay it in a couple of payments over that month. So it helped to obviously it's a neat feature on the credit reporting side, just that all of our tenants have that feature where, whenever they pay on time, they get that reported to the bureau. It doesn't report any negative payments, so it doesn't ding them negatively, it just benefits them. But yeah, it was pretty easy to roll out, and it's been a success for us.
And that's always helpful too, because a lot of times you don't build a lot of credit, and so that offers them the biggest payment that they're paying each month that helps out in making that credit a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Have you, since you're at sort of the market rate property, have you done anything with if you saw a problem with it, have you sort of increased your criteria in terms of screening at all for any, at least recently or at any time, or has that not really worked for your team?
Yeah, it's definitely been a conversation. We've had to tweak it a little bit. My property was actually in lease up during 2020. We actually took over the property in December of 2020 when it was about 70% occupied. So all of this year, we still had to lease up that last bit, and we still have the additional 120 that are going to come early next year to lease up. So it was a little bit of a learning curve too, because we were inheriting some of the tenants and criteria and processes from the prior company and owner, and then now, so yeah, we did have to kind of on the fly, maybe we needed to tweak our credit criteria or we raised the deposit. Just making sure that we were being, fair for the market, but also wise and, protecting the owner's investment by, getting as good, tenants as we could, because we don't want to start off by, having delinquency problems right off the bat. Of course, that's, not foolproof and it happens, and I've got,
Right.
Delinquency issues right now, but it's something that we're able to manage and maintain, and that the screening criteria and adjusting it was helpful.
All right. And then Tiana, share how you're being proactive with your delinquency.
So one thing I've always done, and even since COVID increased on, is getting a list of the, I think Celeste was talking about this, about the city programs or programs that the state may offer to help tenants to pay rent. And I just make sure that as soon as someone gets behind them, they're made aware of that, that can be a potential resource. Philadelphia has something called PHO rental assistance, which has been really amazing for both landlords and for tenants alike, because even if my tenant doesn't apply, I can apply for them. And that actually has decreased our delinquency down to just about 0. And that has been a really great way to kind of make up. And as soon as someone gets behind, I let people know, I let the owner know, like, hey, I'm going to file for PHL rental assistance for this person. I tell them, they're usually pretty thrilled and go through the process very easily with me. And 9 times out of 10, if they are delinquent for actual, like, real reasons, by like they lost their job or hours got decreased or something like that, they would qualify, and then we would make sure that there's no delinquency in that particular building. Because Philadelphia is has very large employers. We have Comcast, we have the University of Pennsylvania, we have Jefferson Hospital, and then we have Pennsylvania Hospital, which is always like one of the top 5 or top 10 hospitals in the country. They are a major employer. So one of the things that we do is just keep abreast if programs get cut. Particularly with COVID, a lot of the graduate students who were also professors or part-time teachers, their programs got cut for the teaching portion. So there goes their income. As soon as I'm made aware of that, I reach out to the tenants and just kind of have that communication about, hey, what's the plan? What are we going to do? One of the things that I do is actually base it also off the season. Because Philly's September to, I think a lot of people are, I'm not really sure in other states, but we turn over 80% of our units that do turn over between May and August. So if I have a tenant who's delinquent, who cannot pay, and it's the end of May, what I do is an assessment of, well, why they're not paying. Like if they showed me proof, they lost their job due to COVID, I'll look at their unit, see the upgrade level, and if it's at a good point, and we're at a good point in the summer, typically, because unlike Adam, and I'm so jealous of you that you can get people out that fast, our process is minimum 3 months to get the date. Forget getting them out, just to get the court date. So typically, it's cheaper to say, it's okay, you can go. And I've done that, and it's literally never cost me more than waiting 3 months for the court date to be set in the city of Philadelphia. And typically my leasing team is amazing. They can just lease it up, usually before the person even leaves at the end of the month. So at the end of the day, I have 1 month delinquency, which I'm keeping the security deposit, and we rented it, and it's the summer, so we probably rented it at a higher amount. That's an option flexible, I think, particularly to us in Philly, just because I know how the contracts are given out for Comcast, and like I said, because of who the bigger people are insofar as the employers are concerned. We do actually have a late fee waiver kind of program. I'll waive late fees up to twice in a 12-month period, but never consecutively. all of this is also contingent on communication and contingent on proof. I'm a really big proponent of that. If a tenant comes to me and they don't have proof of any of these claims, I'm sending them right over to the attorney. I can't begin to get into anything if the person is not willing to communicate with me. And then our attorney takes care of it, and then we file for eviction. The last option I give tenants is re-rent it yourself. We allow them to do that. We tell them what our approval process is, because I'm still going to go ahead and approve that person, so they still have to qualify through us. And then I'm like, well, they rent it as is. And then more often than not, because maintenance doesn't go in a clean, we don't turn it. So it's no fee at all to the landlord. We're completely digital in our portfolio. So the only thing we have to do is change the 4-digit code to the unit. It usually ends up working out. And the next person, I give them the option for the most part to sign a 12-month lease. And then they're in, the rate's in, we didn't lose any money, we didn't send anyone into turn, and the person is happy because they got out.
Yeah, a lot of your options I love, with you're kind of balancing that empathy, but it's because you're not filing eviction, so they're not getting that on their record, so you're offering them sort of an alternative, especially when it's tough times right now. So I love that the balance there of the empathy and action. I think that is a really good demonstration of that.
Well, we did that with COVID. So when it first hit, I met with the owner and I said to him, let it go, let them go. If they got released during COVID and don't have a job, we're never going to get the money, just let them go. And I actually think that helped us to lower our delinquency, because then we had more vacancy, but that didn't really, a lot of the colleges, University of Pennsylvania, like I said, most of those people, even if they had virtual classes, still came back. So we ended up not being hit too hard, and our occupancy ended up staying up, just because I think a total of 15 units let people go. Just like, okay, can't afford it, gave me proof, I verified it, let them go, and then we re-rented it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's a really good strategy right now, for sure. So we're running a little late, but in terms of delinquency as well, so obviously it's all fun and games when everything's on time and all the residents are happy and doing things right. When we do run into delinquency issues, obviously then that sort of makes the relationship a little bit awkward, right, with that resident. So my last question for our panelists today is kind of, what is the best strategy for managing that resident relationship once they have been delinquent? So how do you handle that to make sure that they still feel welcome, they still feel celebrated despite, their inability, or maybe just a blip in their sort of ledger, if you will? So how do we make sure that that still feels good for them to live at our community? So Adam, do you want to start in just a minute or so?
Sure. Yeah. So, it ties back to what I said at the beginning, how I think, it all starts from day one, just that rapport, just building that trust and that that relationship is just helpful. Because, they know you're not approaching them out of, malicious intent. You're not trying to kick them out of their house. It's just, you have your job to do. So you're trying to, make sure you're able to collect. And so if you have that rapport, it can go smoother. If they're already, it doesn't help too, if they're displeased with someone or something, or someone at the property, it can just be really messy. So sometimes you have situations as well where you can't appease people, and that's tough. But even if the relationship is good, as long as we're clear with options and consistent with everyone, it should work out. But so the other thing for me is managing the delinquency. If you start the collection efforts at the beginning of the month with a running aged receivable report and just keeping good notes on it, I think it's helpful, because you have different coworkers that may talk to one person, and tenant calls in and talks to your coworker, and they don't update you. If you guys in the office aren't communicating and keeping good records, it makes that process a little messier, because you just make people mad. You're like, I already told your coworker I was going to pay you next Tuesday. Quit calling me. Some people get kind of upset. So I think just keeping the good records and communicating amongst the staff is helpful too.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think that happens a lot when they talk to multiple people, and sometimes on purpose to confuse you, but other times you just want to make sure that you're all on the same page too. So, all right, Tiana, what are you doing with your resident relations?
It just goes back to maintaining open communication. What I have found is that if the tenant provides me proof that they, have a pay cut or lost employment, I am extremely empathetic. And I'll give them all their options just up front. This is what you can do. And I have found those tenants who are responsive to me, they immediately, okay, well, listen, I gave her proof. She's good. The calls aren't harassment. The calls are checking in. Have you had luck with this? Have you had luck with that? And if they haven't, then, I'm a worst case scenario person. I always give that to them. And I've had tenants like just really appreciate it or just say, I'm going to be honest, which is usually my favorite line from tenants. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I can make this work. Okay, well, this is probably your best option. If not, this is how we're going to move forward. Which makes it so it isn't dragged out. They don't feel like I'm attacking them because they've provided me with information that I needed. And those who do, typically, I never hear from them. I'll send them letters and texts. So communication is key, and just making sure I maintain it throughout the way before they, I file for eviction, or, if they decide to leave, or I let them go.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to be honest with you. That is so true. All right, Celeste, to wrap it up, how are you doing that with resident relations after delinquency?
I think that the other panelists had really great ideas, and I want to go back to something you said with your last conversation with Tiana, was balancing empathy and action. I think the way to maintain a positive relationship is always to maintain that empathy with them and keep the communication positive. The resident knows they are delinquent. We know they're delinquent. And if we come at them with, we are just trying to help you, we are trying to get a solution or work together to get a solution, I think that's always going to help maintain the relationship.
So true. And I think, it allowing the empathy is there. And if we go to sort of our sort of takeaway slides today, I think, the communication, as we mentioned today, balancing the empathy and action. Because if you have the empathy but no action, then obviously it's just going to set the standard, for all of your residents. And you certainly don't want it to be empty threats and things like that. So unfortunately, even though that's the harder part, balancing that, making sure that we're still taking care of our residents, but doing the things that we have to make sure that our community is still profitable and able to sustain all the other residents that live there and pay on time. So I think communication is key with not only delinquency, but everything in multifamily, right? So finding those different ways to communicate with your residents. And we mentioned a few today. So texting, email, call, knocking on doors, flyers, all of those things that we're all used to are involved there. I think resident loyalty as well. A lot of our panelists talked about it today, but building those relationships with our residents from the very beginning, and still celebrating them. Sometimes people do fall on hard times, so making sure that they still feel like part of our community, and that we're there to help them. I think that a lot of our panelists mentioned that as well. And then be a resource. So I think we've had to pivot in the last 18 months or so and become resources and learn things that we never knew we had to learn with all of this rental assistance options. But being that resource, making sure your team is trained on what the options are to make sure that whoever they ask in your office can give them answers. I think that really shows that we're not just here to collect rent, right? We're here to make sure that you love where you live, and that resident experience is still high priority, and we're here to help. So I think that is super, super important for that piece. So we do have a couple minutes, which is unusual today, but we'd love some questions. So if you have questions for our panelists, any of them in particular, they'd love to answer your questions. Or if you have a creative delinquency strategy that's worked for you, we would love to hear what that is. So if you want to pop that in the questions box, we'd love to hear if you're doing something super cool, and we'll share that with all of the attendees today. So if you have questions for our panelists, pop that in the questions box, or a creative delinquency strategy. We would love to hear that. And I'll get to that in just a minute, but I wanted to say thank you. Delinquency is not the most fun topic, but it's important. And I think, it takes a lot. It takes really talented people to really make this happen and make it go smoothly. So thank you to my amazing panelists. You guys are incredible. And I'm so thankful that you shared your knowledge today and what you do to help your residents through this process. Just so you know, our next Power Panels webinar is Rockin' Renewals. So we are looking currently for November panelists to talk about renewals and renewal strategies. So if you know someone that works at one of your properties or with you in your office, or if it's you, we would love for you to nominate an on-site team member. So you can send that to mdecicco, DECICCO at satisfax.com, or you can put it in the comments in the exit survey today. We'd love to hear if you have someone that is amazing at renewals. We want to hear from them and have them on our panel. In addition, in the exit survey, we'd love to hear future topics that you want to hear about. So please share those with us. Now to find out how to get the $50 Starbucks gift card. So about an hour or so after the webinar, we will post on social media, both Facebook and Instagram, the audience rating and a quote from one of our attendees. All you have to do is follow us first of all, and then like and post the comment on our post with the audience rating with the little money emoji. And then the contest will close tonight at 5. So tomorrow we will announce who that winner is for that $50 Starbucks gift card. So we'd love for you all to be entered to win that. And isn't this the most fun? I know it's like fall now, but this pink purple drink on the Starbucks secret menu just looks delicious. So I thought I would share that with you guys today. All right, so we have some questions, it looks like. So I am gonna pop over to this. Change the wording to be more sensitive to residents and included resources on late notice. We send letters to residents 2 weeks before rent is due, asking them to reach out to us if they are going to have trouble paying next month's rent. That's a really, really good idea. So thank you for sharing that. So sending residents letters 2 weeks before rent is due, asking them, like, do you need help? What can we do to help you through this? So that's a really, really good point. Thank you to that. Yep, so someone else said, sent a recurring email on the 3rd, 8 a.m. that reminds them to pay rent by the end of the day to avoid a late fee. Just a friendly reminder and touching base with them. That's a wonderful idea as well. I know at a former company that I was at, we did something kind of Tiana mentioned today, but it was a program, and we let people know. We had flyers, we email blasted about, if you lose your job, you just let us know and we will let you out of your lease without any kind of late fee, or without any breakage fees too. So just making that we understand times are tough. If you've lost your job, if you provide us proof, we will let you out of your lease. Obviously, probably won't get your deposit back, but at least you won't have to pay those hefty lease break fees. And that gives them that option to avoid being delinquent and avoid the eviction process. So I think that's really cool. I love the, let you out of your lease, if that is sort of an option for you. So again, our technology partners, I think there's all kinds of cool stuff out there now to help us with this. So we want to say thank you to Stake. Hopefully you guys kind of take a look at them. Again, it's just offering sort of cash incentives. It may help you sort of avoid some of those concessions too, that aren't any fun in your budget line items anyway. So, and it's a cool way to market too. If you think about it, everyone's saying 1 month free, you can say, get cash back on your rent, and so just gives you another angle when you're talking about marketing your property and sort of standing out. So hopefully all of you will join us for Rocking Renewals, November 18th, and same time, same place. So we hope to see you then. And please, 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 we love feedback. So please let us know how we did today, how much you love delinquency. And we will see you next month. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you, panelists.